Go to Zurich, the retired colonel said, standing 3 feet from my mother's grave. Ask for the Brandt office. Tell them your mother's name. They'll know what to do. I remember the rain more than anything else. Not heavy, just persistent, the kind that soaks through your coat slowly so you don't notice until you're shivering. Fort Logan National Cemetery stretched out behind us, row after row of white markers standing at attention the way the people buried beneath them once had. There were maybe 6 of us at the service. A chaplain, 2 men I didn't recognize, a woman from the VA who had helped with paperwork, and me. No flowers except the ones I brought. No eulogy except the chaplain's standard reading. My mother had been a retired Army nurse. She spent 22 years in uniform and never once hung a photograph of herself wearing it. Growing up in Colorado Springs, I thought my mother was the most ordinary woman alive. She worked at a walk-in clinic after she retired. She drove a 10-year-old Subaru with a dent in the rear bumper she never fixed. She kept a garden in the backyard, tomatoes mostly, and she read thick novels on the porch every evening until the light gave out. She never raised her voice. She never talked about the places she'd been stationed. When I asked her once, in high school, what it was like being in the Army, she looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Busy." That was all. She died on a Tuesday in November. Aneurysm. The clinic receptionist found her in the break room, still holding her coffee mug. The hospital called me at my office in Denver where I worked as a tax preparer for a mid-size firm. I remember hearing the words and watching them float past me like subtitles in a language I didn't speak. She had no visible savings beyond her pension. No second property. No safety deposit box that I knew of. Her will was typed, notarized, and kept in a manila folder in her desk drawer. The house went to me. A small life insurance policy was split between me and my older sister, Grace. Everything else was ordinary. Grace called me the night before the funeral. Her voice had that edge it always carried, half concern, half calculation. "Did Mom have anything we don't know about?" she asked. I told her I didn't think so. "Figures," Grace said. She never planned ahead. That wasn't true, but I didn't argue. At the cemetery, after the chaplain finished and the flag was folded and handed to me, I stood there holding it against my chest like something fragile. That's when I noticed the colonel walking toward me. He was tall, mid-70s, silver hair cropped close. He wore a dark overcoat and no insignia, but something about the way he carried himself made rank obvious. He stopped a respectful distance away and waited until I looked up. "I served with your mother," he said. "A long time ago." That startled me. My mother had never mentioned anyone from her service years. Not once. He reached into his coat and produced a small envelope, cream-colored, unsealed. Inside was a single card with a Zurich phone number and a name written in neat cursive. "Brandt. Go to Zurich," he said. "Ask for the Brandt office. Tell them your mother's name. They'll know what to do." Before I could respond, he touched the brim of an invisible hat, a gesture from another era, and walked back toward the road. I watched him disappear into a dark sedan. No license plate I thought to memorize. No name I thought to ask. I stood in the rain holding that card for a long time. I didn't tell Grace. That evening, I went back to my mother's house. It still smelled like her, lavender soap and old paper. Her reading glasses sat on the arm of the porch chair. Her garden gloves hung by the back door. Nothing about the place suggested international finance. I opened drawers I had never opened. Utility bills paid 3 months in advance. Grocery receipts organized by month. Tax returns going back 15 years, all clean, all modest. But in the closet of her bedroom, behind a row of winter coats, I found a leather satchel I had never seen before. Inside were documents in German and French, a second passport with stamps from Switzerland, Belgium, and the Netherlands, and a small leather-bound notebook filled with dates, initials, and dollar amounts. The entries spanned almost 18 years. I sat on her bed and stared at the notebook like it was written in code. In a way, it was. Grace texted me that night. "Any updates on the estate? Let me know before you file anything." I put the phone down without answering. The next morning, I called the Zurich number. A man answered in accented English, polite, unhurried. I gave him my mother's name. There was a pause, then he said, "Yes, we have been expecting this call." My pulse didn't quicken. It steadied, like something locking into place. He asked when I could travel. I told him I would need a week. Of course, he said. When you arrive, please bring a certified copy of the death certificate and your identification. No mention of accounts. No mention of amounts. Just calm procedure. After I hung up, I walked through the house again. I noticed things I had overlooked before. A filing cabinet in the basement with a combination lock. A fireproof box under the bathroom sink. My mother had lived simply, but she had lived deliberately. There is a difference. Grace called that afternoon. I talked to a friend who does estate law, she said. She says we should get a full accounting before we divide anything. There's not much to divide, I said. Then it should be quick. Grace lived in Phoenix. She had moved there after her second divorce, started a real estate business that ran hot and cold. She borrowed money from Mom more than once. Mom never mentioned it to me. I only found out because I saw the checks in the ledger. I booked a flight to Zurich without telling anyone. I packed my mother's second passport, the notebook, the death certificate, and my own ID. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I trusted the quiet logic of it. My mother never did anything without a reason. She just rarely explained the reason out loud. The flight was long. I spent most of it thinking about the years after Dad left. I was 9. Grace was 13. Mom didn't cry, at least not where we could see. She picked up extra shifts. She made lunches the night before. She helped with homework at the kitchen table with the same calm focus she brought to everything else. Grace resented the stability. She called it robotic. I called it survival. Zurich in December was gray and precise. The streets were clean in a way that felt intentional, not accidental. The cab from the airport passed along the lake, and I watched the water sit perfectly still under a pale sky. The Brandt office was on a quiet street near Bahnhofstrasse. No signs on the building, just a brass plate beside the door with the name etched small. Inside, the lobby smelled like polished wood and old money. A woman at the front desk greeted me by name before I introduced myself. A man in a charcoal suit appeared within minutes. "Miss Callahan?" he said. "Please, come with me." We walked down a hallway lined with doors, all closed, all silent. He led me into an office with a window overlooking the street and gestured for me to sit. He offered tea. I accepted, though I don't remember drinking it. "Your mother was a remarkable woman," he began. "So people keep telling me." He opened a folder. Inside were documents bearing my mother's signature, dated over 2 decades. "She established a charitable trust with us in 2003, he explained. "It has been maintained through regular contributions and disciplined investment." He turned the folder toward me. The figures were listed on a single page, clear and precise. The trust held just under $9 million. I read the number twice, then a third time. "This can't be right," I said. "It is accurate," he assured me. "She clipped coupons," I said, and I wasn't sure why that was the detail I reached for. "Many of our most disciplined clients live modestly," he replied without a trace of judgment. He explained the structure. The trust was designed to support a specific group, families of military nurses and medics who had been killed or permanently disabled in service, housing assistance, medical bills, educational funding for children, all administered anonymously, all documented meticulously. "Your mother was the sole contributor for the first 7 years, he said. After that, a small number of other donors joined, but she remained the architect. Who are the beneficiaries?" He handed me a second folder. Inside were summaries. No names, just case descriptions. A daughter in Ohio whose mother died in a field hospital in Kandahar, now attending nursing school. A family in North Carolina whose father lost both legs to an IED, mortgage kept current for 11 years. A widow in Georgia whose heating bills were paid every winter without explanation. My mother's hands had done all of this. The same hands that pruned tomatoes and turned pages and never once pointed at a medal on a wall because there were no medals on any wall. "There is also a letter," the banker said, sliding an envelope toward me. "To be delivered only upon her passing." My hands didn't shake when I picked it up. They went still. Before I opened it, my phone buzzed. "Grace, where are you?" she asked. I called the house. "Handling paperwork," I said. "What kind of paperwork takes you out of state?" I paused. "I'll explain when I'm back. Don't make decisions without me," she said. I opened the letter after we hung up. My mother's handwriting was small and careful, the same penmanship she used on grocery lists and birthday cards. "If you're reading this," Then I wasn't able to tell you myself. I'm sorry for that. I didn't keep this from you because I doubted you. I kept it because generosity changes shape when people watch it. It becomes performance. I never wanted that. She explained that after she retired, she stayed in contact with families she had known during her service. Not socially, quietly. She saw what happened to the ones who fell through the gaps. Benefits denied. Claims delayed. Children growing up without a parent and without a safety net. She didn't write letters to Congress. She didn't start a nonprofit with a board and a website. She started setting money aside. You don't make noise about help, she wrote. You just make sure it arrives. I folded the letter and held it against my chest the way I had held the flag. When I got back to Colorado, Grace was already at the house. She had driven up from Phoenix overnight. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a laptop open to an estate law website. Talk, she said. I sat across from her and placed the folder on the table. I didn't hand it to her. I walked her through it the way the banker had walked me through it. Mom set up a trust, I said. In Switzerland. It supports families of military medical personnel who were killed or disabled. Grace stared at me. How much? Just under 9 million. The number landed like a stone dropped into still water. 9 million, Grace repeated. And she let me borrow $20,000 like it was a sacrifice. It wasn't her personal account, I said. It was a trust. Structured, designated. And who controls it now? I do. She named me successor trustee. Grace leaned back in her chair. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. Why you? I don't know. Yes, you do. She was right. I did know, but saying it out loud would have sounded like an accusation. What about us? Grace asked. What about her actual children? There's a family provision, I said. Structured support, conditional on financial counseling and documentation. Grace laughed, but there was no warmth in it. She's managing us from the grave. She's protecting the trust. From who? From me? I didn't answer. Grace pushed back from the table and walked to the window. She stood there looking at the garden for a long time. The tomato cages were empty now, leaning slightly in the wind. I always thought she was holding back, Grace said quietly. Not money. Herself. Like she had this whole other life she wouldn't let us into. She did, I said. This is it. Grace turned around. I want a lawyer to review everything. That's your right. Don't say it like that. Don't be so calm. I learned it from her. That was the wrong thing to say. Or maybe the right thing said at the wrong time. Grace grabbed her coat and left without another word. Her tires kicked gravel as she pulled out of the driveway. I sat at the table alone. The house was quiet. The clock above the stove ticked the way it always had. I read my mother's letter again. Generosity changes shape when people watch it. It becomes performance. She had known this moment would come. She had known money would test us. She had prepared for it the only way she knew how. Quietly. Grace retained a lawyer in Phoenix within a week. The letter arrived at my home in Denver. Formal, precise, requesting full disclosure of the trust's assets and questioning whether my mother had properly reported foreign holdings under U.S. tax law. I hired an attorney in Colorado Springs named Margaret Yoon. She was in her 60s, steady-voiced, former JAG Corps. She reviewed everything over 2 days and called me into her office. Your mother was meticulous, she said. FBAR filings, FATCA compliance, everything current. She used a CPA in Geneva who specialized in American clients abroad. She thought of everything, I said. People who grow up with nothing usually do. The first hearing was in a Denver courtroom. Beige walls, fluorescent lights. A judge who looked like he had seen 100 families sit where we were sitting. Grace sat across the aisle. She didn't look at me. She looked thinner than the last time I'd seen her. Her attorney argued that the trust's existence had not been properly disclosed in my mother's domestic will, and that Grace, as a direct heir, was entitled to equitable distribution of assets. Margaret responded calmly. The trust was established under Swiss law and referenced in the will's supplementary documents. It was compliant with all applicable U.S. reporting requirements. There was no evidence of fraud, concealment, or undue influence. The judge asked for additional documentation and scheduled a second hearing. Outside the courtroom, Grace spoke to me for the first time in 3 weeks. You could stop this right now. How? I asked. Split it. It's not mine to split. $9 million, she said. And you're going to hide behind structure. I'm going to honor what she built. Grace shook her head. You always did what she wanted. No, I said. I watched what she did. The second hearing brought bank certifications, investment records, and anonymized beneficiary reports. Margaret presented everything with the patience of someone building a house one brick at a time. On the third appearance, the colonel appeared. He didn't announce himself. He walked in quietly, sat in the gallery, and waited until Margaret called him. He testified the way he probably did everything, directly, without embellishment. I served alongside Captain Callahan at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in 2004, he said. She treated wounded soldiers with a level of care that went beyond protocol. She maintained contact with families long after her duty required it. The trust was her initiative. No one pressured her, no one directed her. She simply saw a need and filled it. Grace's attorney tried to suggest the colonel had influenced my mother's decisions. No one influenced Helen Callahan, the colonel replied evenly. If anything, she influenced the rest of us. The judge ruled the following week. The trust was valid. The petition was dismissed. No dramatic conclusion. Just a ruling, read aloud in a half-empty courtroom, and then silence. Outside, Grace stood beside her rental car. She didn't speak at first. I walked over and stood next to her. You weren't going to give an inch, she said. No, even though I'm your sister, especially because you're my sister. She looked at me, and for the first time the anger seemed thinner, like paper held up to light. She never trusted me, Grace said. That's not what this is. It feels like it. I understood that. I did. Trust and love don't always land in the same place. Mom loved Grace fiercely, but she trusted me with the structure because she knew I wouldn't bend it. That's not a judgment. It's a job. 3 weeks later, I drove to Phoenix. Grace's apartment was smaller than I expected. The real estate office she ran was a desk in the corner of her living room. There were bills on the counter, organized the way someone organizes things when they're trying to pretend they're not overwhelmed. She opened the door and didn't seem surprised. I figured you'd come, she said. We sat at her kitchen table. It was smaller than Mom's, but the posture was the same. 2 women sitting across from each other with something heavy between them. I'm not here to argue, I said. Then why? Because Mom built a provision for family. Structured support, debt counseling, financial planning, controlled distributions tied to progress. Not a lump sum, not a blank check. Grace's jaw tightened. You want to manage me. I want to help you without destroying what she built. There's a difference? Yes. She was quiet for a long time. Outside, a siren passed and faded. How much did she give away? Grace asked. To those families? Over 18 years? Nearly $4 million in direct support. The rest grew through investments. Grace exhaled slowly. She drove that dented Subaru. She did. And she had $9 million in Switzerland. She didn't have it. She held it. For other people, Grace rubbed her face. I borrowed money from her 6 times. 6. And every time she said, "Pay me back when you can," like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing, I said. But it wasn't everything either. I wanted her to be proud of me, Grace said, and her voice cracked on the last word. She was. She never said it. She didn't say it to me either, I replied. She showed it. Grace looked at me with wet eyes. You got the trust. That says everything. No, I said. It says she trusted me to protect it. That's different from love. We sat there for a while without speaking. Then I laid out the plan. Debt consolidation over 3 years. A financial advisor, fully funded by the trust. Monthly distributions tied to benchmarks, not perfection, just progress. Accountability without humiliation. And if I say no, she asked, then nothing changes. Would you walk away? I already did once. In court. Grace let out a tired laugh. You sound like her. I know. We spent the next 2 hours going through numbers. What she owed. What it would take to stabilize over 3 years. It wasn't glamorous. It was spreadsheets and honesty. But it was real. And real is what my mother built her entire life around. When I stood to leave, Grace walked me to the door. She really did all that, she said. The families, the scholarships, the mortgages, 18 years of it. Grace shook her head slowly. I thought she was small. She wasn't. A year after the court dismissed Grace's petition, we stood together at Fort Logan. Not because anyone asked us to, because it felt right. The headstone was simple, the way Mom would have wanted. Name, rank, dates. No extra inscription, no decoration. Grace had changed in 12 months. Not dramatically, not in a way you'd notice if you passed her on the street. But her posture was different. She had completed her first year of financial counseling. She had paid down more than half her debt. She closed 2 credit cards she didn't need. She started teaching a free homebuyers workshop at a community center in Phoenix, something she said she wanted to do because someone should explain this stuff before people get in too deep. She hadn't become perfect. She had become steady. The trust continued exactly as Mom had designed it. A daughter of a combat medic in Virginia started her 2nd year of nursing school. A family in Washington state kept their home after the father's traumatic brain injury left him unable to work. A widow in Florida received a new wheelchair-accessible vehicle, delivered without ceremony, without cameras, without a single press release. Grace glanced at the headstone. "I used to think she was holding out on us," she said. "She was holding something," I replied. "Just not what we thought. Do you ever wish you'd just split it?" "No." She looked at me. "Even when I sued you?" "Especially then." Grace gave a small smile. We stood there for a while. The wind moved through the cemetery the way wind moves through places that hold weight. Gently. Like it knows. Before we left, Grace cleared her throat. "I was wrong," she said. "About her. About you." "I know," I answered. She didn't say more. She didn't need to. On the drive home, I thought about the moment I first opened Mom's letter in that quiet office in Zurich. Generosity changes shape when people watch it. She was right. For a few months, Grace only heard numbers. So did I, honestly. 9 million can make your chest tighten, but over time, the number faded. What remained was purpose. Mom hadn't left me wealth to enjoy. She left me a standard to maintain. There were nights over the past year when I felt overwhelmed. The paperwork, the decisions about who qualified, how much to release, when to say no. But every time I was tempted to simplify it, to liquidate and walk away, I thought about the way she lived. The dented Subaru, the tomato garden, the reading glasses on the porch chair, the quiet. Grace meets with her advisor once a month now. She sends me updates on her own, not because I ask, because she chooses to. We still disagree sometimes. We still carry history, but we no longer carry resentment at the center of every conversation. The trust will continue long after I'm gone. It's structured that way. The Zurich office has succession plans, legal layers, oversight mechanisms. Mom thought in decades. I used to believe loud success was the only kind that mattered. Bigger titles, public recognition, visible proof. Now I see it differently. If you've ever sat at a kitchen table after a funeral and wondered what someone really left behind, you understand. It's rarely money. It's patterns. It's discipline. It's the example you choose to follow or walk away from. My mother was a retired army nurse. She never hung a photograph of herself in uniform. She never told war stories. She lived quietly and died the same way. But she didn't leave quietly. She left instructions, and she trusted me to follow them. If this story made you think of someone in your own life, someone who gave more than they showed, take a moment today to honor that. Call them if you still can. Forgive them if you need to. Learn from them while there's still time. And if you believe that grace doesn't have to announce itself to matter, I hope you'll stay with this channel. Share your thoughts below. Tell me what quiet strength has looked like in your life, because sometimes the deepest legacy isn't what people see. It's what they never had to.